right. Rabbi David is back, and with I think, a really amazing talk. Uh, just the title alone is intriguing to me because I think it's kind of opposite in its own way, and that's primarily the talk that you're about to give. So just the title, I think, is wonderful. We have some stuff about you, and it's you moved to Ashland, Oregon in the 70s. That's a famous author is from Ashland, from the oh well, I'll remember soon. And many books, many poetries, many language arts textbooks, teachers' guides. You got albums, you got children's poetry. It's amazing. And ordained in 1995, Jewish Renewal movement, and spiritual leader of Havurah Shir Hadash Synagogue. Did I do that justice?
You did pretty good, yeah.
Okay. In Ashland. And I read about your daughter's book on helping people to her 103-year-old grandmother, and how she reluctantly at first brought her in to her house, and then had a total transformation about that.
Well, let me just correct that. It's actually my wife's
Oh,
130-year-old grandmother.
okay.
It's called Bringing Bubby Home.
Bringing Bubby home.
It's an amazing memoir of bringing her to our home about 15, 20 years ago, where she was on hospice and alone in Los Angeles, and we brought her here to to live and die her last months. It's an extraordinary memoir.
So what's really fascinating from my perspective is that my wife's mother is about to be 104. And we are, I think your book is going to be very, very helpful and useful. And there it is, up there on the screen. Thanks, Kyle. That was great. So, Rabbi David, take it away.
Thank you so much, Jeff. I really appreciate the introduction, and it's
Yeah.
wonderful to be back here. I think what's happening at the Center of Universal Oneness is really a model for where we all need to go. Teilhard de Chardin, the great Catholic mystic, said, "I descend to the particular by being Catholic, not to stay Catholic, but to ascend to the universal of seeing myself as part of the bigger picture." And I feel that way too about my Judaism. I think Judaism is my individual path, is the path of the Jewish people here on this level of reality. But if it doesn't rise up to let me see myself as part of Buddhism and Hinduism and Islam, Christianity and indigenous thinking, so what? I've got my own religion. That's great. It's sort of like I compare it to baseball. If there weren't teams, different teams, there wouldn't be a game. And we push back and learn from each other. We inspire each other. So I think what you're doing here at the center is really fantastic, and it's an honor to be here. So I am going to talk about the ancient future because I think I'm going to do it with a slideshow. And if anybody has a pressing question, you're not going to interrupt me. You just unmute yourself and ask the question, or you can wait till the coffee time and afterwards, and we'll share it together. Okay, here we go. So I want to start by calling this a Hebraic thinking, a visit to the ancient future. And in the early 1990s, an incredible Native American teacher who actually grew up here in Ashland, Winona LaDuke, she gave a talk that I attended about the distinction between what she called indigenous and industrial thinking. It occurred to me that this was identical to the distinction between Hebraic and Greek thinking. Here are the key elements in the way our ancestors experienced existence. And I want to say our ancestors, meaning if you're Jewish, great, but in all traditions, every one of us goes back to some indigenous root. So wherever you're from or your ancestors are from, in Europe or Asia or wherever, they go back to some indigenous root where people saw things a little bit differently than the way we do here in, you might say, the West. For example, time, past, present, and future is fluid. In fact, I'll give you an example. In ancient Hebrew, there was no past, present, and future tense in the verbs. It was either it was action that was completed and action that's incomplete. Incomplete action is like the creation of the world. So a bad translation from the Bible is, in the beginning God created, with an ed at the end. It doesn't say that in Hebrew. It says something like, when God began creating. In other words, the action is incomplete and it's an ongoing creation. So God bless King James, but it's a bad translation to say, in the beginning, as if there was only one beginning. God created, as if it's past tense. The second element of Hebraic thinking or indigenous thinking is that space, the here and the there, is fluid. So, you know, you're in Central Time, I'm in Pacific Time. There is this distance between us that we call space, but really the space is fluid. And in fact, something like this amazing development called communication, telecommunication, and electricity, and then computers, and now Zoom, that suddenly the space, the distance between us is now fluid. We're flowing, something energetically is flowing between us. This is not just a projection of electrons, but something much, much deeper is connecting you and I together, each of us. We see it in the relationship between the singular and the plural. It's fluid. I'm not going to do a whole thing on the Bible right now, but there are so many words that are plural words that get translated as singular, or singular words that get translated as plural. But in Hebraic thinking, they're really definitely fluid between them. So, for example, it says, in the beginning God created, when God began creating the heavens and the earth. The word heaven is plural, right? So it's not just heaven, but there are heavens, these multiple layers of realities that we call the heavens. The relationship between time and space themselves is fluid. I'll be going over that in a little while. The relationship between the masculine and feminine is fluid. It's unbelievable, the aspects in, at least when you're looking at the Bible, there are words that have a neutral gender, but in the Hebrew, they're masculine and feminine in the most beautiful poetic ways. So that the soul is considered a feminine force in the world. The Torah itself is considered a feminine force in the world. By having the masculine and feminine in a way divided that way, gives us a really gorgeous view of the ancient poetic mind. Another thing that I'll be going over in greater detail next week is that our ancestors are alive. That we could say they're in the past, but we'll see why a little bit today, and we'll go over it in more detail. The world is just, the world that we live in is just one of many worlds. This is definitely true in mysticisms, whether it's Sufi mysticism in Islam, or Kabbalistic mysticism in Judaism, or certainly in indigenous thinking, that the ancestors are with us, and the world that we live in is just one of many realms, one of many worlds. What we call angels, they're all around us. God, in Hebrew, God is not a noun. God is more of a verb. You know, one of these gerunds that can go back and forth between God is a noun and verb at the same moment. I'd have to go into the grammar with you of the Hebrew, but it's called the Tetragrammaton, the four-letter name of God that gets terribly translated as Lord. I could do a whole teaching on that someday, but really God is more of a verb. God is godding rather than, pray to God. It's a little bit different when you're looking at it from an ancient way. And this brings us back to really one of the points in the Center of Universal Oneness in your mission statement is we call it panentheism, that God is in everything. Panentheism. God is in everything. There's nothing devoid of God. In fact, we go even further in the Jewish mystical view. God is everything. Everything is God. There's no separation between ourselves and the Creator. And it's expressed with the idea that the Creator, the creating, and the created are one. So we have the Creator, this verb between us and the Creator, the creating and the Creator, we're all one. And uncertainty is embedded in the journey. I think one of the things I love about Judaism is that it has a lot of uncertainty. It's like, are you sure about that? Well, maybe, maybe not. In other words, debate, or what we call critical thinking, is really core to Judaism. There's nothing blasphemous about saying, how could there be a God when there's so much anguish and pain in the world? Part of this uncertainty is embedded in our journey that gives us critical thinking so we can push back against reality and make the world a better place. Hebrew words, and this is not just Hebrew, but all ancient languages, have multiple meanings, indicating a unity between opposite or contradictory meanings. Opposites are complementary. The stories in the Torah is us. The stories in the Bible are lived and relived in our own lives today. And the final two things I'll share with you is this idea of animism, that everything is alive, and metaphor is a primary portal to this reality, to a deeper reality. And again, if you have any questions, don't raise your hand because I can't see you, but just unmute and please go ahead and ask. So let's take a look at light and dark. So in the Midrash, in one of our commentaries, we're asked to consider the eyeball. Is it not through the white of it that one sees? No, but through the dark, through the black of the eye. There's something about the light that obscures our ability to see great distances. It is in darkness that we see both deep into space and back in time. Just think when you're at nighttime, you can see the stars, dozens, hundreds of light years away, where in the daytime you can't see them. Something about light obscures our ability to see great distances. Light is great to see what's near us, but if you want to see great distances, you have to see things in the darkness. And what's amazing, and of course this is not just theological, this is scientific, is that you're not just looking deep into space, but you're looking back into time. We know that, for example, the nearest star to us, I think, is like 2.5 light years away, meaning you're seeing what happened. The light you see from that star left that star 2.5 light years ago and took all this time to reach our eyes, but you see it as now, you see it as right now, but the light is left there a light years ago. And of course, a light year is impossible for us to conceive of, right? What is the speed of light? 186,000 miles per second. So you take that light from that star going at 186,000 miles per second, and it took 2 years to get here. You're not seeing the present of that star. You're seeing back in time what that star was like. And look at the illustration at the bottom. So this, of course, has to do with perspective. All the stars you see at night are just part of this little yellow circle. In the Milky Way that we live in, from one side of the Milky Way to the other, from here to here, right, is hundreds of thousands of light years apart. It's all this energetic, it's mass, material, and energy swirling around the common center, even though the distances are inconceivable. I can barely understand what one light year is at 186,000 miles per second, but let alone the distance of having literally, I think our Milky Way is actually closer to like 5 or 10 billion light years wide. So the light on this side, to get to the other side, would take 1 billion years to get the light from one side to the other. And yet this cluster of energy and mass is all profoundly in this beautiful spiral that we call our Milky Way. Darkness is the ground upon which we see the figure of objects. We could not see the objects in space unless we saw it within the darkness. Now, how this applies to those of us who are preachers and teachers is that, in a sense, when we lose something, when we're sad, when we're grieving, when we've been abandoned, that in a way we can call it darkness. But that darkness, when it's properly used through spiritual practice, can transform our way of seeing our health and enjoy it. In other words, You know, when you're unhealthy and you have a cold, let's say, and then you get better, when you get better, it feels even better than you were before because you have something to contrast the two, which is not feeling good. So darkness and light are interconnected together. So, just as silence between the notes of the song creates rhythm, so darkness and empty space between all the objects in the universe creates the rhythm of the creation. It is in the moments of silence, in the darkened sanctuary of our homes each evening, that we can appreciate the deeper meaning of Hanukkah each winter. Stars at night are seen only because the darkness permits us to see the stars so many light years away from us. Light, as holy as it may be, obliterates our ability to see great distances. At night, we not only see far distances, but actually see back in time. The darkness creates the ground upon which the field of the starlight can be seen. The darkness creates a context for both the light in the natural world and therefore in our lives. It is our suffering that gives our joy meaning. This is what Hebraic thinking, or more broadly, indigenous thinking, is all about. Time and space. You know, the physicists, cosmology today and theology are meeting each other. They haven't met in several hundred years. They definitely met in the 16th century as Europe came out of the Dark Ages and came into the Renaissance period of time. Science and spirituality was seen as deeply interconnected. Well, it's happening again at a different level. So since quantum physics and Einstein, time and space were no longer seen as separate. But they were, the term physicists use is space-time, since space and time are really inseparable. So look, take a look at this picture. This is from the Webb telescope. It's it's unbelievable. It's inconceivable what we're seeing here in this little family photograph, you might say. I don't know which one is the Milky Way, but I'm going to pretend that this one is right over here. So let's pretend that this is our Milky Way. And as I said before, the distance between one end to the other end of this beautiful spiral is like 10, I'm sorry, I don't have the fact in my mind. It's 10 billion light years wide, right? Something like that. Don't quote me on that. But it's billions of light years wide. Now look at the distance between this Milky Way, this galaxy, and this galaxy. Inconceivable how many hundreds of billions of years apart, and yet you and I are seeing it in a single frame. This photograph that the Webb telescope took is not just seeing space, but is seeing through time. When you take a look at this star over here, this dot, actually this dot is not a star, this dot is a galaxy. This dot here contains thousands of stars, millions of stars. Our galaxy, the Milky Way, contains millions, billions of stars. All of this in one frame looks like a single moment, but really every one of these bits of light were emanating from a distant, different place in time, hundreds and thousands and billions of light years apart. You're not just seeing space, you're seeing through time. You're seeing the past. The past is still alive, and it's coming to us, right? In this form of light that meets our eyes.
Rabbi David, what's the bright light at the top?
This light?
Yes.
This is the Center for Universal Oneness. They took a photograph of you guys and put it up there. Honestly, I don't know. I think it's where the camera lens just saw that image, but okay. I don't know. Maybe that's
I could possibly shed some light on that. That is probably a foreground star, possibly within our own galaxy that's in front of that's between us and everything else in the back of the picture. And just to put things in perspective, our own Milky Way galaxy is approximately 100,000 light years across from one end to the other, and it's an average sized galaxy.
Thank you, Joe. I really, really appreciate that. You know, it's great to to learn more and more and more. Every decade, the cosmologists are giving us all this new data, and that for those of us who are spiritual, some of us retreat into our spirituality and reject science. Some scientific people retreat into their science and reject spirituality, but some of us are hanging out in the middle and going, wow,
Yeah.
I love the divine, I love God, and I love science, and I want to see how they interconnect together. So the more we learn, Joe, I really appreciate that.
Yeah, God is science is the way I've always put it.
Exactly. God is science. Yeah.
I think that bright light is the Star of David.
It's now it's the Star of Doug. Okay, here we go. Here's a little poem that I wrote. Okay, let me actually I get my guitar just to give it a little sweet background here. The light of you from a far star years away. I swear it's now, but know it was a light from long ago. And now my light from this star here, our sun, will travel far to meet your eyes. To you will be now, in years to come, you'll swear, when I say that I recall, and you say, now I see. This I've learned. My past is your tomorrow, as yours is my today. And now I see what was so long ago, and so I say, now I see. Memory is a recall of the past. But what if memory was more than just intellectual recall? What if memory was taking that ancient light of something that you did when you were younger, something that your parents or grandparents did when they were younger? What if memory is actually tuning into the actual real energy of that event? It's not just in your head between your ears, but it's actually tuning into that past event. And by creating a memorial, by remembering those who died in our lives, you're actually bringing them back into the present. We're going to learn more about that next week. All right. So time is the distance between events. Space is the distance between objects. Modern cosmology has taught us that it's really space-time. They're interconnected together. Next week, we're going to learn about anamnesis. Time past still exists, whether that let's say in Christianity is the resurrection, or in Judaism it's the Passover. And we get this from the stars by just looking at the stars at night. And every great spiritual tradition has some kind of remembrance practice. In Judaism, we say the Kaddish or the Kiddush prayer. We have a prayer called Yizkor that we do on our festivals. And let me give you an example here. Let's take a look at this word olam. This is translated in many ways in, let's say, the Bible in English, because it means time and space. It means world, it means universe, and it also means forever. The same word forever, which is temporal, is the same word for world. The same word for world is universe. So it's like a fractal. Whenever you see this word, at least when I see it in the Hebrew, it's like a mind-blowing little window into how what we would call opposites, time and space, are really interconnected together. So let me move on here. The Hebraic thinker lives with scriptural ambiguity. I want to give you an example here. Sometimes I'll be doing work with evangelical Christians, and they'll say to me, "Do you believe the world was created in 6 days?" And I go, "Yes, but I believe each day was 2 billion years." In other words, the word yom in Hebrew does not mean 24-hour day. It means an indefinite period of time or a definite period of time. It doesn't distinguish between it. So if we know, let's say the Big Bang was 14 billion years ago, I just divide that by 6 and say, yeah, a couple of billion plus years for each day, I'm really with you. That's in a way the way I really believe it's so healthy to approach scripture, whether it's in Islam, the Quran, or the Christian scriptures or the Jewish scriptures. If you filter it through your eyes literally in English, you're going to be missing out at the depth and the beauty that's really underneath it. continue here. Boy, time goes fast in a group like this, you know? All right, let's see what we got. All right, let's do a song. So this song really, Chernobyl in Ukraine is known, sadly, because of the nuclear power disaster a few decades ago. But it once was a center. It used to be at like 80% Jewish population, and it was a center of Jewish mystical, Kabbalistic learning. And just like today, the schism and the split that exists between religious people and secular people would come to the Chernobyl Rebbe Nahum of Chernobyl, and they'd say, Rebbe, how can I believe in God? There's so much anguish in the world, the wars, the suffering. I can't believe in God anymore. And the Chernobyl Rebbe said something amazing. He said, Mihu hachayut sheli, halohu habore yitbarach. Which means, you know that life force that's in you? That's God. There's no one to pray to. It's to tune into what is. There's no one to pray to. It's to tune into what is. You have a life force in you. That's God manifesting itself. In every moment, God manifests His self, itself, herself, as David, as Terry, as Doug. God is manifesting Himself, herself, as each one of us. I am alive. I am alive. I am alive. I'm alive. Join me. And who is this aliveness I am? And who is this aliveness I am? And who is this aliveness I am? Is it not the Holy Blessed One? Is it not the Holy Blessed One? That's going to be part of our meditation in a little while, is to envision that life force inside of us, not just as the energy of life, but actually God itself, God herself, manifesting itself through you. One great spiritual practice is to know that there's two kinds of time. And this comes to us from the Greeks, chronos and kairos. Chronos is chronological time. So this is my little ditty, my poem. Father time, tick-tock time, set the alarm time, time to get up time. What time is it time? Lunchtime, 5-minute break time, gotta plan stuff time, put it on my calendar time, work week time, making a living time, gotta get it done time, move your tuchus time, and do time. Kairos, whole different thing. Next month I'm actually retiring from my congregational position after 35 years. And so I'm going to be going into Kairos, which means the right moment kind of time. This is what it's all been leading to, time. I don't even know what time it is, time. Here I am, time. I'm not even asking what time it is, time. Time beyond measure, time. What is time, time? This is the perfect moment, time. Just hanging out time, time to relax time, in the zone time, my kind of time, time. Sit, have some tea time, weekend time, good Shabbos time, BBB time. So this relationship between do during the week and the Sabbath BBB is a beautiful distinction that the Greeks gave us. Now I'm gonna, so to speak, close. This is a group of cosmologists who try to understand the relationship between what was before creation and what happened after creation. How could something arise from nothing? So these are not poets, these are physicists you'll hear. It'll just take a moment. Oops, I lost it. I'm sorry. Guess what? You're not going to get that right now unless I can find it. Let's just take a couple of minutes before we do the meditation, and I'll try to actually find that for you, unless it's hiding. And if anybody has any comments or questions, please ask away.
The thing that you just read sounds a lot to me like Allen Ginsberg.
Yes. Yeah,
So
Ginsberg was definitely part of that whole beatnik movement of trying to get beyond the dialectic of good and bad
yes,
and opposites, and trying to find that connection. Listen to this. I think I found it here. Okay, here it goes. This is a mind blower. Remember, these are cosmologists, not theologians. Oops. Here we go. Sit back, relax.
Before the Big Bang, there was no up, there was no down, there was no side to side.
There was no up, there was no down, there was no side to side. There was no light, there was no dark, nor shape of any kind. There were no stars or planet Mars or protons to collide. There was no up, there was no down, there was no side to side. And furthermore, to underscore this total lacking state, there was no here, there was no there, because there was no space. And in this endless void, which can't be thought of as a place, there was no time, and so no passing minutes, hours, days. Of all the paradoxes that belabor common sense, I think this one's the greatest, this time before events. Because how did we get from nothing to infinitely dense, from immeasurably small to inconceivably immense? But before we get unmoored from the question at the start, let's take a breath and marvel at when math becomes an art. Because we don't have to understand it to know there was a time when there was no up, there was no down, there was no side to side.
So, I hope you thought that was great. If not, you'll probably never invite me back to speak again. But
Oh, I loved it. I thought that was fantastic.
thank you. I love that kind of paradox, and that's what we'll do right now. Let's just take a few minutes and we'll do our meditation. Is that okay? So I'm going to keep my guitar here because, when I play the guitar, it gets me out of ordinary thinking. Just playing a chord, sometimes just doing this, sets me in a mode of thinking that's kairos, not chronos. I'm no longer worried about rushing. I just want to be here right now. And music can bring us to that place. So let's just take a moment, take a breath, be here now. Let's go back in time to some event in your past where maybe you were disappointed or hurt. Maybe you had a great loss or abandoned. Go back to that event for just a moment. And then envision that event being a seed that actually helped you grow, that ultimately good came out of it. It wasn't good what happened. You were left alone, you were abandoned, you were hurt, you were sick. But what came out of it was good because you did your inner work. So let that moment in the past be a seed right now to help you continue in your growth, in your evolution, in your connection to the world around you. And now we'll take another step. Imagine yourself at night looking up at the stars. And actually do this, please, tonight, tomorrow, through the summer. Look at the stars. And don't just see them as now, but envision yourself looking into the past. See the past in those stars. Just as real as those stars are to you right now, so your past, your family's past, is also present to you right now. All the stars in your family, the darkness, the light, the joy, the pain, it's right in front of you. And it can bless you. It can give you great, great strength. Great strength. So envision yourself looking at those stars, seeing into the past, and then looking into your own past and and seeing every event in your life as one little star in a whole galaxy in your own personal Milky Way. And finally, imagine that divine, whatever you call God, is not being outside of you, but being inside of you, as you said in your mission statement. But not just inside of you, but inside of every one of your friends. In fact, God is inside of everything. Every stone, every leaf, every star, every memory. That life force, that chayut we call it, that is God. And when you pray, it's not just talking to yourself, but it's talking to that divine force that's in you right now for as many years as you have on earth. That life force within you is in every one of you, everything in nature. So here's the practice. Envision yourself at a place in nature you love, by a creek or a stream or the ocean, in the woods, and imagine being in the midst of this divine conversation where everything in nature around you is God, inside of you, inside of every tree and every leaf. And you'll feel yourself in communion. The synagogue, the church of creation. That's my kind of mosque. That's my kind of synagogue. Take a clearing breath. And we say, Amen. You know, Jeff, they say time flies when you're having fun. I feel like we've done this. Haven't I only been talking for like 3 minutes or 4
Yes,
minutes?
yes,
Yeah.
but who knows about time, one way or another, it doesn't matter.
You know, I tell you, it's amazing. In all seriousness, I'm 77 this year, and I'm retiring from my congregational work. I just love it, but I don't have the energy. I don't know if you guys have noticed, but I don't have the energy that I had like when I was 40. So we've hired this wonderful young rabbi. She just came from Jerusalem after 6 years of being there. She's actually from Chicago. And boy, it's just so cool to watch her work because, she's got that kind of energy. I don't have that kind of energy, but I got something else going on in me. And that aging inside of me really wants to express itself in a new way. I realize I'm going into my elder years. I'm going into my Sabbath of my life. I'm going into the December of my life. And I don't just want to, like, as they say, I don't want to die in the saddle. I don't want to go into my late 80s and still be doing what I was doing when I was 40. So I've got a lot of writing and a lot of teaching to do. But I think what I'm saying in the deeper sense is that as we get older, we have great opportunities. I can get really down on myself. Oh boy, I can't do this, I can't do that, I can't, I don't have the energy that I used to have. Yeah, that's sad. Great. And now what are you going to do with it? Right? So it's what I'm going to do with my own loss and my own lack that can really help me into my elder years to become an even better teacher. So, folks, what's your next step, Terry or Jeff? You take some time for coffee now, or
Actually, we have some participation from the group to hear some concerns and some gratitudes and a prayer, and then we'll come back to coffee talk. So that should be about 7 minutes or so, depending on how much time people take. So, wow, just a fabulous way to look at and see things that are opposite to each other, and how we tend to want certainty. We can't stand ambivalence.
Right.
And so it seems, and that's actually where the richness is. So
Yep.
I was just blown away. Wonderful stuff.
Thank you, Jeff.
Yes, thank you.